Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question, because I've actually am in the process of working on a biofuels alternative facility to be located in northwestern Minnesota that would be using proven technology. We originally looked at ethanol, but we had to have $3.50 to $3.75 per gallon of gas in order to even become profitable. But and I've heard on the ethanol issue, if you take away the subsidy, it's going to hurt the farmers. Our process will actually utilize the waste from their farm fields to produce gasoline, propane, and hydrous ammonia, and it actually has a better, the gasoline will have more power, it'll be less pollutant than the gasoline that you put in your car today. So there are alternatives out there. We have to be creative to go out and put this together. Our project that I'm working on is about 5 years to completion. But it'll provide good paying jobs. It'll help a lot of businesses in Minnesota to prosper, and it'll help the farmers. So we need to look for alternative fuels. We can't be dependent on foreign countries. And there are, like I said, there are proven technologies that we're going to utilize to do this.
Bill, I do have a follow-up for you, given what you just said. Is your current program in any way subsidized by the state of Minnesota or any other governmental entity?
No, it'll be private sector.
Should it be subsidized?
No.
All right, on we go. David, what do you say? End the biofuels in the government?
Well, without question, I've been the only non-rural member of the Ag Committee in the Senate, I think, for the past 7 years. And I've introduced bills to eliminate the ethanol subsidy, also bills that would call for an accounting of how valuable those subsidies are to the industry as a way of demonstrating their value or the need to have them to keep the industry going. Those things have been resisted by our friends in the corn farming industry. But it's not just ethanol. There's a push right now to expand that same model to cellulosic ethanol, to other forms of biodiesel production. None of these things are work. The legislature is not a venture capital outfit. They cannot make decisions about how to invest money that isn't even ours to invest and look at ways to making a profit. And I would also say that we should take a look at eliminating the mandate that we have on purchasing gasoline with ethanol in it. I've talked to a lot of businesses. I worked for a manufacturing company for 25 years, and we made sandwiches, and I always thought, boy, it'd be great if we had a law that required everybody to buy a sandwich, once a week. Just think how many jobs we'd produce if we did that. These things are not right. Government shouldn't do it. Government should not be subsidizing any business, whether it's a baseball team or a farm organization or any other type of business. Legislatures are just not venture capital outfits.
Thank you. Phil, go ahead. Government in or out on biofuels?
I would never support subsidies. And I don't know the life experiences of my fellow candidates here, but I farmed in Mille Lacs County for 21 years. And during that time, basically myself, I had proven yields of about the highest in Mille Lacs County as measured by the Agricultural Stabilization. It was the ASCS office at that time. And basically myself and my fellow farmers in Mille Lacs County, because of government programs, we never made any money on the crop. We really farmed the land so that we got the government subsidy because that's where the money was. And it was it was a food policy and it was an agricultural policy basically that in a sense was an effort to destroy farming. And all we were getting is working for the subsidy. And I can say from my personal experience, I would never, ever support that. What we have to do is look at, when we say alternatives. We've got alternatives. We've got vast reserves of oil, coal in this country. We've got the opportunity for nuclear, and we legislate against doing that in Minnesota. So don't talk to me about subsidies. They don't work. They never did, and I have a life experience of knowing it.
See how many times already we're hearing that when the government inserts itself into the private sector, it screws things up? And we do it all the time. Next thing you know, some lunatic's going to suggest we take over the healthcare system. All right. Government in or out of biofuels?
Sure, thank you. The question before the next governor is going to be, are we going to reauthorize subsidies for ethanol? And my answer is going to be no. And I voted to eliminate the ethanol subsidy last session. Now that isn't easy for me because I have more corn farmers than anyone else in the legislature except for about 3 other people. I have the largest ethanol plant in the state of Minnesota, and I have Farm Fest in my district. But people, I think, respect someone who's genuine and someone who's going to tell it like it is. The reality is there's a 10-year contract on ethanol subsidies. They run out. There is little doubt that there are plants that are going to come in and ask for subsidy extension. Before all of the folks on stage, are you going to sign or veto that? And the answer is that I will veto that. The other question, I think, Dave, is that the biodiesel, which is not subsidized, is going to be next in line wanting a subsidy, and the answer is no, they should not get one. And I think growing up on a corn farm, and a hog farm, and a soybean farm, and having an enormous amount of farmers in my district and having an ag background helps. It's kind of like Nixon going to China. Sometimes it takes an ag guy from an ag district to explain this is what the situation is.
Well, Mike, being at the end of 9, it's now your job to figure out something novel. Go for it.
Well, something novel ought to be great for me, as a #1 global warming denier in Minnesota, and understanding biochemistry and engineering, the energy issues, I think better than my counterparts up here, although I will suffer on some of the other questions. Biofuels, it's ridiculous to subsidize anything to begin with, because when you subsidize something, you hook somebody on a government program, and Madison said it best, when people start voting for somebody that will give them more money in their pocket, that is the end of democracy. Corn ethanol is stupid. I almost got lynched by farmers last year. I grew up on the farm, and I told them and explained to take a starch, as a biochemist, to take a starch, turn it to a sugar, turn the sugar to alcohol, is ridiculous chemistry. You start with a sugar, it would be 60% cheaper. Take apples, for example, and turn them into ethanol. The government, if it has any role, is to steer the ship, to spur innovation, to move people to want to create the kind of market where we're looking at new energies, next generation energies. Where you need to go is, I believe, on the 28th, there will be a new processing plant opening in Isanti, Minnesota. It's called the Magayan process. It's a very unique process that doesn't require government subsidies. Of course, they want it because everybody else gets it. But they can create both ethanol and biodiesels in a new process that pays for itself. The University of Minnesota, we subsidize them every year to come up with new answers to biofuels. They are 10 years behind the real market. They don't deserve our money on any biofuels as well. We need to spur innovation.
All right. Go ahead. Favre mean anything to you people? You recently arrived on the scene, and some think he might have a good career in the National Football League. And if he does have a good year in the National Football League, I have an idea we may have a stadium on the horizon, literally and figuratively. Now, some of us out here are disturbed about the way the Twin Stadium came down because we were all told that it wasn't a subsidy, that it wasn't government, it didn't come directly out of the state government. But on my view, and I think in the view of many of you folks, the government did something even more insidious, which was take the decision out of the hands of the citizens of Hennepin County and give it to the commission. So I'm not going to ask a simple question like, will you promise not to sign on to state funds for a Viking stadium, but will you promise not to do anything to facilitate any government unit to give money to help build a Viking stadium? Mike, go.
I will promise not to put any public subsidies into a stadium, but I think you need to understand why people want public subsidies. The government, the state, the county, the cities want to control those people's private money. They want to tell them what they can do with a stadium. The only place private stadiums exist in the United States is when we passed laws that said you may rent out this stadium for anything consistent with an activity within a professional sports facility. And I'll give you a quick reason as to why those public subsidies do exist and why they shouldn't, and why we shouldn't control private property. As mayor of East Bethel, we had an ice arena built by people that had kids in hockey. They wanted their kids to have ice time. They were renting out the ice arena for dances, for gun shows and things. The arena paid for itself. I voted no on all these things, but people complained about the noise from the dance, and it was about a half mile away that the ice arena is from people. Pretty soon, the city controlled that and said you can't have any more dances there. Well, then all they had left was gun shows and other shows there, and pretty soon citizens said, well, we don't want those kind of people there. So pretty soon the city council outlawed that. Well, guess what? The city did use their authority to put the bonds together so they could get cheaper interest rates, but after the city actually created ordinances by which these people could not rent out the facility, these people almost lost their houses. Everything they had put up, the city ended up taking it over. So it's only because of government's far-reaching hand that these things do not exist on their own.